Welcome back to Content Swap.
Wow. Great intro. The Content Swap podcast, where we swap content and then, we kind of like spoil everything that we talk about. So keep that in mind.
Unless it's fairly new.
Unless it's fairly new and we don't think that it should be spoiled, then we don't spoil. But for the most part, if it's old, be prepared to get spoiled. So with that in mind, and this being a podcast, what's new? What's going on? How was your week?
It was okay.
And there you have it. So
sometimes it's just, that's it.
Yeah.
You know?
Anything to update on?
No.
No threads from last week's update? No, not really, no. But
I was like, are you what?
Well, this week, we're still waking up at 6 a.m. Every day. And
I've been failing a little bit.
Yes, you have been waking up.
A few days it's been more like 7.
Yes. At least 3 times, I think you have been like, I'm going to sleep until 7. And I'm like, I'm going to go into the living room. And
I know.
Because I am awake now.
I'm going to get back on it. During the week, I'm good about it. It's
the
weekend.
You did it today's Saturday, and you did it this morning. So what's your
That's what I said. I said during the week, I'm good on it. During the weekend, I'm bad at it.
Well, you did it twice during the week. So what's your excuse?
I don't recall.
All right. Well, because we've been doing that, we've got time in the morning to just sit and watch something. So this week we've been watching Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And actually kind of getting through some of the episodes, because when we recorded that episode, we'd only watched the pilot, which was 2 episodes in
really
length.
Long. Yeah.
But so we've been enjoying that.
Yeah. It's been fun. It's a good morning watch, because it's like kind of.
It starts with
Yeah.
Bow.
Yeah.
Bow bow. And
I'm like, I had my cup of tea.
Yeah, it's very cozy like that.
Yeah.
Despite being
about murder.
It's just a weird show in general. Highly recommend. Go check it out. Check out our
Twin Peaks
episode if you want to hear us break down the very first episode. Mm-hmm. So what are we here to talk about today?
Yeah, so I'm going to start with what you assigned me, and that was The Warriors, which came out in 1979.
All right, what's The Warriors about?
Yeah, so basically, to give the context before I just summarize the whole thing.
Okay.
It starts off with all the gangs in New York City and all the boroughs of New York City are basically called upon by this guy who kind of runs the biggest gang, and his name is Cyrus. So they all meet up in this one spot. There's tons of people, and Cyrus basically makes this declaration that they should, for a minute, just put aside their beefs with each other, so that they can all kind of take over New York City, overthrow the police, and run things together. And so everyone's pretty down for it. They're all like, yep, let's do this truce. And then someone in the crowd kills Cyrus. And so everyone's like, oh my gosh, the police come. Everyone kind of flees. Well, there's one guy in particular, the guy who killed Cyrus, who blames it on this gang called the Warriors. And he's like, I saw who did it. It was the Warriors. So that basically sets up the entire movie, in which not only are the police after just monitoring the streets, because there was all these gangs that were in this one place, but all of the gangs are now after the Warriors for killing Cyrus, which they did not. And so that's literally the entire movie, is the Warriors trying to get back to Coney Island in order to be safe. But of course that means they have to take the train to Coney Island, and along the way obstacles pop up because all of these gangs are kind of after them and causing these things so that they can get them, causing these situations.
Wow, great summary. That was really good.
Yeah.
So yes, a couple details that I would like to fill in. So all of the gangs at the beginning of the movie, when they meet up with all the other gangs, it's not every single gang that is at this meetup. It's each gang sent 9 delegates to represent their gang. So there's about 100 gangs there, so it's 900 people all in one place. And the reason that Cyrus is confident that they can overthrow the police is because with all of the gang members that they have in total, between, you know, all of the gangs, all of their affiliated members and people who are not organized but quote unquote ready to fight, total up to about 60,000 people, and there's only about 20,000 police in the whole city. So that's when, you know, everybody's very excited about that. This meetup also happens in the Bronx, which is, if you don't know your New York City geography, is like the northernmost part of New York City. Well, I don't know if it's the northernmost, but
you've got like Buffalo and everything.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's not New York City. You're talking about New York. Yeah, you don't seem to actually know your geography.
I don't.
Well, I mean, basically, the Warriors are, you know, their home turf is Coney Island, and the Bronx is essentially the opposite side of New York City.
So is the Bronx, I mean, Coney Island, like the most southern part?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I haven't checked out New York on the map, so I'm not 100%. But I do know that it is like, it is
travel.
It is like almost 100 miles. Dang it, I wanted to look this up. Like, how long is the train ride from the Bronx to Coney Island? But
it can't be 100 miles, because in one night they are able to get back to Coney Island.
Right. But they were, I mean, 100 miles is, you travel by train, you can make it. They emphasize, one of the characters in the movie emphasizes, like, now we got to go home all the way to Coney Island. That's like 50 to 100 miles. And I was like, okay, well, that's a very big range.
Yeah.
So I wanted to look it up, but I forgot to do that. But the point is that basically they're at, you know, the opposite side, practically, you know, behind enemy lines, and they need to make it all the way home, which is, you know, hours to get there. So, I mean, I've been to New York City, I've been to Coney Island, and we stayed in New Jersey, and we spent a lot of time around like Times Square, but we did go to Coney Island. And
you stayed in New Jersey, but like traveled to Manhattan? How far is that?
It's not that far. It's like across the river.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
But I think we just took the subway into the city. But the subway ride to Coney Island took forever.
Really?
It's Coney Island really is kind of like very far away from everything else.
Yeah. Got you. Yeah. I've only been to Manhattan. Maybe I went like stepped into Brooklyn, but it's been a while. I haven't been to New York in a really long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of the plot of the movie, is them making their way home.
Yeah. So kind of like my general thoughts about the movie before maybe we pick apart some things. This was an interesting movie. I'm still trying to decide like my scale of how much I liked it, because I did enjoy it. Was it like my favorite movie? No, because not much happens. But I think that's why I did enjoy it, is because it's a very simple movie. Like, you know what you're going to get. You know exactly what needs to happen in this movie. They got to get from point A to point B safely. And that's the entire movie. And I like that simplicity. And you kind of, because you just know how things are going to go down. You know they're going to have a few run-ins. You know, like, they will make it at the end. Maybe not all of them, but, you know. I don't know. It's just like, it's a very clear-cut plot.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that, because you don't have to think too hard about it.
So on that note of the plot, I actually found a piece of trivia that said that the story is loosely based on a Greek story by Xenophon called Anabasis, and it's about soldiers hired by Cyrus the Younger to help. They're trying to overtake the Persian throne, and in that attempt, they find themselves basically alone behind enemy lines, and they have to make their way. You know, they have to march their way back home.
Yeah. I feel like that makes so much sense, because I feel like every like Greek mythology story is like a journey. Like, you think of like Odysseus and things like that. It's like they're trying to get from here to here, and you follow along the way what happens as they go to these different stops and like meet these different monsters and things. So that makes so much sense.
Yeah. And that's what makes it like simple, but then it kind of throws in its own you know, modern day spin on it.
Yeah.
But, you know, in 1979.
Yeah. Interesting. So the funny thing about this movie is, like, the gangs themselves are just very comical. Because you think of any type of thing and there was a gang for it. So for example, there was like a disco looking gang, like they're wearing like disco outfits. There was like a mime gang that had like their face painted and everything, wearing striped shirts.
I believe they're called the hi-hats.
Yeah, there's like a baseball gang, they're wearing like baseball uniforms.
The Baseball Furies.
There was like a fedora gang, they're all just wearing fedoras.
I didn't know their name. Yeah, there was
Hawaiian shirt gang.
Yeah, there was a Hawaiian shirt gang.
Overalls gang.
The Turnbull ACs. It's just like a bald gang.
Like there was a gang for everything, and it made it really funny.
So in my trivia search, I found that in the original script, there was a list of every single gang that was like created for this movie.
Yeah.
And it, I'm not 100% sure because this is based on a book actually that was written in 1965 by Saul Urich. So I don't know if all of these gangs were in the book or if they just made up all of these gangs for the movie. But in total, the original script, I have it here somewhere. I think it's about like 86 gangs. Oh shoot. Well, I had it in here somewhere. Oh yeah. There were 86 different gangs with names and everything in the original script. Like
wow.
in the note that I didn't find this piece of trivia and it said there were 86 different gangs. It said, here's the list. And I was like, whoa, that's a lot of names. And so I counted each one. I was like, that's 86.
Like, I bet it was so fun to be in the writer's room and be like, all right, gangs. Let's create a bunch.
Yeah.
Your ideas, pitch it.
I love that. Yeah. I love that they're all like so themed and like dedicated to their theme.
There's a scene where we see one member of a gang come out and he's wearing roller skates, and so I was like, ooh, is there a roller skating gang? Like, yes, I'm here for it because I loved roller skate. And then like they just like the rest of the members pop up and you realize they're all wearing overalls. It's like, oh, not a roller skating gang, it's the overall gang.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny.
I think the name of that gang was the Punks. Yeah.
Got you. It's hilarious. It like brings humor into it.
Yeah. I did find a piece of trivia that the actor that plays the guy in the Punks who's on the roller skates, he told the director that he could roller skate, but he couldn't, so he spent the summer of 1978 teaching himself how to roller skate for that scene.
What a perfect time, too.
Right.
I feel like the roller skating scene then was just so much fun.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I literally they end up getting into a brawl with the Warriors, and I'm like, how is he fighting on skates?
Yeah.
Like, impossible.
That, I didn't appreciate it the first time I saw this movie, but that scene where the Punks are kind of coming after the Warriors, and the Warriors go into the bathroom in the subway, and they're in the stalls, and then the Warriors and the Punks like have a whole brawl in the bathroom. Is pretty well choreographed, like fight scene for 1979. Like it felt like, oh, like that would have been up to modern standards. Whereas sometimes I'll watch like older action movies and they're like slow, I was like, oh, that felt like
it's like very like
brawl.
Yeah, theatrical versus like realistic.
Yeah.
It was interesting to watch anytime they kind of like came at heads with another gang. But to get into like some of the characters, really, I feel like I didn't feel it connected to really any of the characters within the Warriors aside from the main kind of like the leader who stepped up. Well, so let me step back. There was a leader, but when they got accused of killing Cyrus, all the gangs went after the Warriors leader. Yeah. And so I'm assuming is dead because he never reappears.
He's dead.
Yeah. And so this guy named Swan steps up. And so he's really the only one that I kind of felt connected. I don't even say connected to, but I felt had a role. Like I felt like he had a character. Yeah. And it was like you understood his character, what his character was about.
I read that the kind of the point well, not the point, but as far as like who the protagonist of the movie is, they really tried to. Well, yeah, Swan is like, he's the war chief, so he is the one that steps up when the leader's not able to. So the movie does focus a little bit more on him, but overall, the protagonist of the movie is supposed to be like, this team of 9 people and treated as like a single unit. Yeah. So it's like, as long as the group is able to make it back, that's the focus, as opposed to any one of them in particular.
That makes sense. I didn't feel that, like, because the rest of aside from, there's a really young kid who's a part of the gang who you really care for. I don't even know his name.
Rembrandt?
Oh, is that Rembrandt?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I really cared I think the reason why I cared for him and Swan in particular was because, like, some of the other guys in the group are very, like, impulsive, not the best. Like, they're not nice.
There's one guy, Ajax, who is like, he's definitely the biggest. Like, you're not rooting for Ajax. No. He's a problem. In the group. Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, his behavior proves to be his downfall, because he ends up getting arrested because he wants to hit on this woman in the park. Well, they're trying to get to safety at back at home, but on the way there's just like a woman on a bench in the park, and he's like, oh, I want to go hit on her. And he ends up taking it too far. She handcuffs him to the bench, blows a whistle, the police show up, and he gets arrested. And it's like, so I was, despite his character having that, like, terrible attitude, I'm glad that they kind of like, punished his character. Because, not like, as you said, Cleon, he dies at the beginning of the movie, and there's another member, Fox, who dies at one point. He gets hit by a train, and then Ajax gets arrested. So
but even like the other two do. So at some point they kind of get separated, and there's 3 guys who are together, and they end up like going with these women. They're like hanging out with these women.
Yeah, they bump into some girls in the subway,
which happen to be girl gang. Love it.
They were called the Lizzies.
The Lizzies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rembrandt is one of those guys who's with them, and like even them, like they acted on like their own self-interest in that moment, and so I was like, ugh, like, what are you guys doing, like, and Rembrandt's like, we literally need to like go, like, why are we here? And they're like, oh, chill, relax, and obviously it like bites them in the butt because the girls try and like kill them, but yeah, so it's like I think I really liked, not to say that I only cared about, but like, I don't know, the people that I was rooting for was Swan and Rembrandt, because both of them were like, throughout their interactions with people, were like, let's just talk to people, let's level with people, like, there's no need to fight, there's no need to brawl, we need to be smart, like, we don't need to get caught up in all this stuff, we're just trying to get home. And like, that was like admirable, I guess.
I also liked Cowboy and Snow.
Who is that?
So Cowboy was the one wearing the cowboy hat.
I don't even remember.
And then Snow was the black dude that hung out with Cowboy as well.
I don't know.
Well, because it's like Swan, Ajax, Cowboy, and Snow are the ones going through the park, and then because they had just gotten into a fight with the Baseball Furies, and ended up winning that fight and took some of their baseball bats. Yeah. And that's when Ajax is like, I'm going to stick behind and, talk to this woman. He ends up getting arrested. But the Cowboy and Snow are the two that were like, we should go check on him, make sure he's okay.
Yeah,
and they go back and they see he's arrested, and they're like, all right, well, that's what you get.
Yeah, no, I like them too. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I forgot about them. But I think that like that says something too. It's like, there are so many characters, and there's really like they're running around all the time that like it's kind of hard to keep up with like who's who, and like you forget about characters easily. Like we just finished this morning, and I completely forgot about them.
Yeah, well, see, I kind of have like a home field advantage when it comes to this movie, because the the first time I ever experienced the story of the Warriors was not from watching the movie. It was actually, so this movie came out in 1979, but in 2005 or 2006, I want to say, Rockstar Games, the creators of Grand Theft Auto, made the Warriors video game for the PS2 and the Xbox. And I played it on the Xbox, and it's a really good game. So I thought what was really interesting about that game was that, like I just played the game. I hadn't seen the movie. And so the beginning of the game actually starts 3 months before the movie. And so you spend the first half of the game, like, learning who the characters are, developing their relationships, and a lot of the people from the movie reprise their roles to do the voice acting for their characters.
Oh, nice.
And so, like, you learn a lot about their characters, you learn a lot about their relationships, and there's just, like, the gameplay is really good, and there's even, like, side content where it'll be, like, a side mission where it's, like, play the story of when Cowboy and Swan first joined the gang. And so it's like you can play these side missions of like when each of the individual 9 members joined the Warriors. So there's like, it was just packed with story. And then it's all like, they're kind of alluding to like, oh, this guy Cyrus wants to do this meetup. And then the second half of the game is the events of the movie. And they literally recreated it with like, PS2 graphics, shot for shot.
Wow.
And then added in gameplay segments. And it was just a blast. And you could play it with 2 people.
That sounds like fun.
It was a really good time. And I remember specifically there was this mechanic where you could run at a group of people and then just leap and like go full horizontal and just knock them all down. So that's why when you brought up the clown gang, I was like, oh, those are the hi-hats, because the hi-hats are a big nuisance for the first half of that game, and you you get into a whole brawl with the leader of the hi-hats. But yeah, so they recreated the whole movie shot for shot. So the first time I guess watched the Warriors was in these like PS2 cutscenes. But then I watched the movie after that, and it's like, wow, I've seen this movie already.
Yeah.
So it was really cool.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, so I have a bit of an advantage because I'm like, oh, I forgot. I know all of these characters' names and actually know a lot about them because, like, Rockstar Games made a whole video game based on this movie, which I've never really... I can't name a time where somebody has like made a game based on a movie that was made like 30 years before. Usually it's like, oh, the movie's coming out, so somebody made a game based on the movie, and it's like they'll expand a little bit. But this was more like they chose the Warriors as an IP because they wanted to, and they expanded on it, and they did a really good job.
Got you.
So yeah. So like you did bring up the scene where the 3 guys are with the Lizzies, and that's Vermin, Rembrandt, and Cochise. And I read that Vermin, who is kind of like, he's the kind of more comedic relief character. His character in the original script was supposed to die in that scene, but because the guy that played him ended up being like kind of funny, they kept him alive. And the guy that played Rembrandt was the only guy in the cast who was openly gay. So when they were with all the women, they just wrote his character to kind of be the cautious one who, wasn't really seduced by the women. So yeah, there's a bunch of facts for you.
Yeah.
Any other things you want to talk about?
Yeah. So I want to talk about the ending a little bit.
Okay.
So by the end, spoiler alert, the remaining warriors do make it back to Coney Island. However, the guy who kind of was the cause of all of this, who accused the warriors of killing Cyrus, and he's the guy who did in fact kill Cyrus, him and his gang show up to Coney Island. And so throughout the movie, I'm like asking myself, like, what does he have against the warriors? Like, why is he causing all this chaos? yeah, like why did he do what he did? So when they're in Coney Island and they kind of come face to face, and at this point the Warriors realize like, oh, we are being accused of killing Cyrus, and that's why everyone's after us. So they come head to head, and Swan asks this guy like, why did you kill Cyrus? And he literally is like, because I felt like it.
He's like, I just like doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I can just do what I want. And I was like, I hate this. Like, I didn't hate it, but like, I was just like, really? Like, that's it? Like, that is why all this happened, is because he just felt like doing it. And I feel like even if that was his answer, like, cool, whatever. But I felt like the ending was a bit anticlimactic. So basically this guy points a gun at Swan and shoots. It misses Swan, but Swan at the same time had thrown his knife, and his knife lands like in the guy's arm. And he like cries and whines like a baby, and it's just like, ugh. And then the Riffs, who are basically the people, it's like the biggest gang. I'm assuming that's Cyrus's gang.
Yeah.
Yeah, they show up and they're like, we have come for this dude. Like we're sorry that we thought it was you. We know it's him. We're taking him with us. And that's essentially what happens. And like, the dude is like being a big baby and is like, no, but I didn't kill Cyrus. It was the Warriors. And I was just like, one, this dude's a punk. Like,
he's supposed to be.
Yeah, I know.
The name of the gang that accuses the Warriors is literally called the Rogues. They're rogues.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I was just like, how dare he cause all this chaos and then act like a baby once he gets caught?
Yeah.
Like, it's just dumb. And I don't know. I just like, I mean, I hate to be like, I wanted to see more happen to him, but I kind of wanted to see more happen to him.
So, well, in the video game, while the credits sequence plays, I think it's you play as Masai, the leader of the Riffs, and the whole credit sequence. It's like the credits are playing, and you and the Riffs are just beating up the Rogues, and that's like all what the credit sequence is. It's just like them kicking the crap out of them.
I know. Again, I hate to say that I wanted to see that, but I just wanted to see more.
Yeah.
I was like, ugh, all this chaos, all this stress, and all we get is just like him crying and then them taking him.
I mean, I think when you've got a group of, 900 people in the park,
yeah, it's
like there's bound to be that one guy running that one gang who's got that chaotic energy that doesn't care for this.
Yeah. I mean, I for sure, as soon as they all got together, I was like, I know exactly what's about to go down. Someone's going to like kill Cyrus because like it's the perfect opportunity, They're all like, it would be so hard to know who did it. But yeah, I don't know. I was just like, could he have a better reason or something? Give me something more.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
All right, I've got a lot. So, part of the reason why I picked this movie is just because, like, I really like the tone of it. I really like how it feels. Like, the soundtrack, I think the score, I should say, really adds a lot to the feel of the movie. It's kind of this, like, surreal vibe. And I really like the opening where, though the acting is maybe not the best in the opening, it's kind of this, like, cut between all the members talking about like this meetup and like, what do you know about Cyrus, or like, what's all of this about? And it's just kind of cutting a lot between like the subway, and you see the Wonder Wheel lit up at night, which is in Coney Island. And I went on with my family, and I gotta tell you, it is the scariest thing I've ever done. I mean, the Wonder Wheel probably was really cool and when they first built it. But we were like, is this up to code? Like, I don't know. Because the Wonder Wheel is kind of, it's like that Ferris wheel that they have at Pixar Pier in California Adventure, in Disneyland in LA, where the cars themselves are on like a rail track and they swing. And it's that, but it feels way less secure. So, and like it's rusted. No shade at the Wonder Wheel. I hope it's still running. And it is very cool at night. But yeah, I just really like the opening and the soundtrack, and I'm like looking forward to listening to some of the soundtrack like on my own this week.
Yeah. The vibe kind of feels like it's like if you paired Hunger Games with Escape from New York and merged them.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it felt like to me.
The other thing is, so a lot of people know the line like "Can you dig it?" or like "Can you dig it?" And that's from this movie. So there you go. And apparently this is Shaquille O'Neal's favorite movie, and he during championship season would be like, "Can you dig it?" So there's that. But then also like Warriors could come out and play. That's from this movie.
I thought this movie got that from something else. I thought it was from a horror movie.
Nope. I looked it up. Yeah. He the actor who did that, he said he just kind of improvised that and based it on like a neighbor that he had that kind of freaked him out.
Fair. Wow.
Yeah, some other facts that I have. So James Remar plays Ajax, and he's the one with the bad attitude that ends up getting arrested. He says a lot of like anti-gay slurs in this movie.
Yeah, it was awful.
Which also supports him not being a great guy. But what I thought was an interesting fact was that he the actor went on to play gay characters in 2 other movies. I'm like, okay, so is that like redemption or
I don't
some
know.
guilt? I don't know. That was interesting. All right, some other quick facts. The movie was filmed in 60 days. They filmed from midnight to 8 a.m. every single day. It was filmed in New York. The only scene that was shot on a set was the one that was in the bathroom.
It's got to be tough filming in New York.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
maybe it was easier back then than it is now, but...
Well, there's actually a lot of stories that I wrote down about the filming of this movie. So, like, there were always spectators watching them film, especially, like, even when it was 3 a.m. and it was freezing cold outside. A lot of people... Sometimes they had to like change filming locations because people were being like really rowdy while they were watching them film. But outside of that, so the opening scene with all of those people, there's actually like real life gang members in that crowd. And the filmmakers did that to like appease the local gangs because the local gangs were not happy about them shooting this gang movie where people were going to be walking around with like fictitious like colors. Like in the movie they say like you're wearing like take off your colors if you're gonna walk through our turf. And the colors is basically like the gang's outfit, their theme outfit. So yeah, they put some real life gang members in that opening scene to just like appease them. But they're also kind of worried about like, well, we've got these like actual like the scene is that there's peace between all these real like all these gangs who are rivals, but they hired like real life gangs who were actual rivals to be in the scene, so they sprinkled some undercover cops in the group as well to make sure that things would like stay steady.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh yeah, and so like one of the real life gangs, like they would be upset if they like weren't cast in the movie. So like they would send the crew members like death threats and stuff. And one time during a lunch break, they came in and like destroyed a bunch of equipment.
Dang.
Yeah. So it doesn't sound like it was an easy shoot. And they had to really like make sure like if you go off set, don't be wearing your costume because then like the real life gangs will like get upset and think that you're like a gang member. So yeah, there's just like a lot of that going on. That was really interesting. Let's see. Oh, and when the movie came out, it was like #1 at the box office, but then it had to be pulled from theaters. So it like really killed the momentum of the movie. I say killed the momentum. That's literally what I read said that. So I should quote that. So IMDb trivia. But that it had to be pulled from theaters because like actual gangs would be drawn to go see this movie, but then they see their rival gangs at the movie, and it would cause some like violent incidents. So the studio ended up having to pull it from theaters, but it still ended up being successful. So, and it's considered like a cult classic. And what else do I have? So the director originally wanted, in line with the original message of the book that it was based on, he wanted all of the characters to be Black and Hispanic because that was like what was in the book, but the studio disagreed and like wouldn't let them do that. So that's they put white characters in the movie. I thought it was pretty interesting. And the guy that played Fox, who gets hit by a train, his character was not supposed to die in the original screenplay. His character ended up dying because the actor and the director were like butting heads a lot and couldn't see eye to eye. So they ended up writing his character out. And apparently, both the director and that actor have since kind of felt like regretful about that, and that's how it ended up. And so they've since then made peace with it. But
that makes sense why his death was so like uninteresting.
Yeah.
It's like he randomly gets tossed in front of a train and then they never really talk about him.
Right.
And it's like, I literally, like, I couldn't tell you what Fox looked like. I don't remember him at all. Like, it was, and I would have not even noticed him get killed.
Yeah.
Like, it just happens in such a split thing and they move on and so much else is going on that you're like, did a guy just like get thrown in front of a train?
Yeah. So yeah, the director, he was really like, if I had been a better director at the time, then I would have figured out how to, handle the relationship that I had with him a little bit better and, direct him a bit better. And so, yeah, he felt very apologetic about the fact that it ultimately resulted in him just killing off the character partway through filming.
Wow. Well, we love self-reflection.
We do. All right. I wrote under the part where I talk about the 86 different gangs. I did write like, you've got a whole universe at that point. Like we could have had the Warriors cinematic universe.
Yeah.
All right. And so, okay, I got a couple questions. What did you think of the like radio sequences?
It reminds me a lot of, there's other movies that have done that where there's kind of like this narrator, you don't see their face, but like they're talking into the radio. And I feel like I'm trying to think of like a movie that does that. I feel like Beauty Shop with Queen Latifah, there was something like that.
Well, so can we describe a little bit about what the radio parts were in this movie?
Yeah. So basically there is a woman who's a radio host and she's like sending out messages to everybody like through music or like through like just like talking
Her
about
commentary,
it.
yeah.
And so like once like everyone's coming after the Warriors, she's like, hey Warriors, like I got a song for you, like here's a message. And it's like a song that's like you're not like you can't hide, like you can't run or whatever. I forget what the song was.
Yeah, she's like, here's a hit for the Warriors.
Yeah.
And the song is like you can't run or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And so, and the fact that she was like, here's a hit.
Yeah.
It's like saying, they're putting a hit out on the Warriors.
Yeah.
So everybody's got to go take down the Warriors.
Yeah. So that's pretty much her role. And at the end, she's like, sorry, Warriors. We had some bad information.
Yeah.
Hope you're not mad.
She goes, sorry about that.
I know. She's like, our bad. But yeah, so I don't know. I thought it gave it like a nice little flavor. And I've seen it done in movies before. So it was like something that like, I was like, oh, I've seen this kind of happen.
Yeah. I liked that a lot too. It like you said, it added like flavor to the movie. What did you think about the female character, Mercy, that shows up partway through the movie?
I liked her. I feel like so this is a weird thing about the movie. I feel like oftentimes what they're like whatever they're trying to convey in their dialogue, it's very like coded. Like it's never directly what they feel. It's never they're not saying directly like what they mean. It's like they're explaining what they mean without explaining what they mean.
Right.
And I had a hard time with that. Like through Cyrus's kind of speech, I was like, all right, I get the gist of what you're saying, but like you're doing it in a very roundabout way, and it's not entirely clear. Like you're not saying like, boom, this is what we're gonna do. And I feel like there's a moment between her and Swan where he's like saying why he doesn't like her, and she's basically just saying like, I'm out here trying to survive. Like that's what I have to do. But the way she does it, I was like, what? Like I was like, hold on, like what exactly are you saying? And also like, I don't know. It's like I didn't understand that interaction, and I was like, I don't really know where that landed.
Yeah, watching it this time, it really made me think of like, what is the purpose of her character in this movie?
Yeah.
And I didn't kind of really walk away with the answer to that.
Exactly.
So I feel bad for saying it, but she might be my least favorite part of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally feel that. I'm not really sure I understood what the purpose of her character was.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's to like, because I feel like they both, her and Swan, have this kind of like
back and
feeling.
Forth.
Well, it's like they both have this idea of like, we want better for like ourselves. Like we don't, this is not the kind of life we really want to live, but like we're doing what we got to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like their interactions brought that out of like, look, we're both just like, because especially at the end, she's like, I like traveling. Like, can I come with you? And it's like, And so I feel like that was maybe the purpose of her character.
Yeah, and I liked that she was written to like stick up for herself.
Yeah, she was a cool character.
Yeah, but like the way in which they met, and she's like walking down the street slowly, and they kind of like stop her. Yeah. You'll have to watch it if you don't know what we mean. It's on Paramount Plus. Check it out. But I was very kind of like confused by all of that. I was like, what was this? It was just presented in a kind of like strange way, and I was like, oh, okay, she's important now.
Yeah, no, I get that. I love her accent. I love a New York accent.
I did like her accent. Partway through the movie, she like disappears and kind of reappears with a coat. So
important.
Turns out that the stuntman that doubled for Fox, who ends up getting hit by a train. The character gets hit by a train. There's a part where, so originally her and Fox were meant to like share a relationship. But then, Fox got written out, so then they put it onto Swan instead. But there's a part where like Fox is holding her hand and they're like running. So apparently the stunt double like held onto her hand a little too hard, and she ended up having to like get a cast. So to cover up the cast, they put a jacket on her.
I love that they literally have a scene where he's like, where'd you get that coat from? And she's like, I stole it.
She's like, I stole it. What does it matter? You got lots of questions.
I love that they at least explained it so that we weren't just like, does she now have a coat?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, I wrote down like some terms and their definitions, because this movie has a lot of these like slang terms that they use that like we don't say today. So there's like, there's colors, and then there's like bop, like boppers. It's like, oh, like I think Vermin's like, oh, we're gonna have to bop our way back home, and I'm like, it kind of sounds funny, but it's like they're basically saying we're gonna have to fight our way back home. And boppers, like, hey, you boppers out there, it's like fighters, soldiers, gang members. Packed, that's one that they say.
Does he have a weapon?
Yeah, we know that. I mean, that one's obvious. Like, oh, he's packing, but they're like, oh, they're packed. That happens at one point. And then, turf, of course, we all know turf. So I'm sure there's another one I might have forgotten about, but that kind of like that dialogue, I think, kind of makes the movie like fun. Yeah.
I mean, it's very of the time, I'm assuming.
Yeah. It's just so funny to me that they ended up making a video game based on this, because it actually just seems so perfect for that. Especially with the 86 gangs that they put in the script. It's like, cool. They put a lot of those gangs in the video game, and you can like, they're playable. And it's, it's all there with all the theming and everything. So, all right. So last two things are just questions. Who was your favorite member of the Warriors?
Probably Rembrandt, just
Yeah.
because he was so young, and I was like, oh, I just want the poor little baby to be safe. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I do, and I do like Rembrandt's character in the game. Actually, I think it's the very beginning of the game starts out with Rembrandt joining the Warriors, and then he kind of they call him Rembrandt because he's the guy that tags like a W as like their gang call sign basically everywhere they go. So at the beginning of this movie, he does spray paint over somebody else's tag with a big red W for the Warriors. So that's like, it's his thing. All right, and then if you lived in this universe and had your own cartoonishly themed gang, what would it be?
Good question. I don't know. I kind of want that roller skating gang. That'd be so cool.
Yeah.
You just like pull up on your skates. That seems like fun. So I'm going to go with that.
Right on.
What about you?
Oh, I don't know. The Warriors seemed cool.
Oh, that's lame.
I know, it is a lame
so
answer.
Lame.
I don't know, because a lot of the gangs are like, I wouldn't want to be part of that gang. You know, I would want to be.
Make up your own.
Huh?
Make up your
I
own.
know. I'm thinking. Yeah, I don't know. I want to be the gang that knows martial arts. You know, I want to be the gang that's like, you fight with them and it's like they pull some crazy moves and it's like, whoa. We just go around punching and stuff, but these guys know what they're doing. I want to be in that gang.
Got you.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. That's everything I had.
Cool.
So overall,
Overall,
you liked it?
I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It's short. It's entertaining. Yeah, it's a good watch.
Yeah, it's like 93 minutes. Check it out, Paramount Plus.
Do it.
Not sponsored. All right.
All right. Let's switch gears.
Cool. Intermission time. All right. So this week, I was assigned a show called Easy. It's on Netflix. It has 3 seasons, and it first came out in 2016. It's an anthology series, but some of the characters who are in some episodes do kind of overlap with the stories of other characters in other episodes. So it all takes place at the same time. And
It's like the MCU.
yeah, I guess in a sense, it's MCU-like in that way. And it's all in Chicago, and I'm not quite sure why it's called Easy, but the point of each episode is like it is written to kind of have like some kind of message to the episode that you kind of walk away with at the end. For the most part, so I want to say this it's an 8-episode season, and I want to say episode 7. By the end, I was like, that felt like a filler episode. So
I think on your point of like, you're not sure why it's called Easy, I think that might be like ironic. I think the purpose of the series is like, relationships aren't easy. Like,
yeah, the focus is on their
Yeah.
relationship. So yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, the relationships aren't easy, but it's like, it's. I liked the first season that we watched. I will say the fact that it's called Easy, I think, makes it a very easily forgettable show. So I don't think it's a very good title. I'm going to take a quick swig of water in a second.
yeah, I will say I debated on whether or not to assign you season 2, because I think
Right,
I do
you
think it
mentioned
gets there's better episodes, I think, in later seasons. However, there, like you said, a lot of characters kind of reoccur, or they like pop up in other people's episodes, and so I felt it was important to kind of get the foundation, particularly of the brewery guys. I think they pop up the most. So
Yeah, so of every episode that we watched, I mean, a lot of the stories are completely different. But it was the story of the 2 brothers that start a brewery that stood out to me the most amongst all the other stories in this first season. And it's really just like one of these brothers is kind of working in, an office job. He's pretty smart. He knows a bit about finance. And then the other brother is brewing his own beer, working for a coffee shop, and he's got a girlfriend. And the brother who's like, the finance guy has a wife and she's pregnant. And they decide to start an underground brewery together because the return on investment is like 1,000%. But it is illegal to have your own underground brewery. Yeah, I mean, they just kind of like start to get serious about it, but the financial guy's hiding it from his wife because he's worried about what she'll think, and he wants to do this because it's something that he enjoys and he doesn't like his job, and eventually she finds out about it, she gets upset, but they talk about it, and then she's in on it, and they're all kind of like, oh, this is nice. But then it kind of turns into a focus between the brothers' relationship where the one that has, I guess, like the simpler life, who's like kind of really going all in on the brewery, he likes to keep it simple. He wants it to stay simple, but the one that's coming from, like a 9-to-5 job, he wants to like grow the business. He wants them to look at locations, legitimize the operation, and expand. And so there's this relationship between the two of them that's playing out. But then the coffee guy, his girlfriend ends up getting pregnant, and then he kind of realizes like, oh, my simple life can't stay simple forever, and if we're doing this, like, we need to get serious about it. So let's get serious about it. And that's kind of where their story leaves off at the end of the season.
Yeah. I feel like the like moral of the story with them is like, how do you compromise?
Yeah.
And like, how do you take into consideration someone else's ideas? And yeah, find that medium.
Yeah. Especially in this case, they're brothers.
Yeah.
Navigating that relationship as well. It's hard to, go on a business venture with family.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. So that was my favorite of the stories. The rest of the stories are like episode 1 focuses on this couple, and the man is in theater, and the woman is like the breadwinner of the relationship, and she's paid very well, and he's like worried that his wife is not going to be attracted to him because he's not the breadwinner, but it's like, no, she is still attracted to him, so he needs to get over that. And
it's like, how do you keep things interesting in the relationship, especially when you have kids and you're tired from your whatever what you're doing.
Right. Their kids go trick-or-treating, and they want to have an intimate moment to themselves, but like they keep getting interrupted, and so it's kind of it's this display of like, it's tough to keep the spark alive in a relationship once you get married and have kids, and you lose time for that intimacy.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the episode, they do get to have that intimate moment, and it kind of only just served him, and it's very quick, it's very sudden, and it seemed like she was really kind of looking forward to that moment the whole time, and then it was like over very, very fast, and it did seem to only kind of serve his desires rather than hers. And but then the next day they get up, she's making pancakes, and it's like you put a smile on and happy family. So
I will say they do come back, and their storyline gets very interesting.
So I might have like accidentally seen an episode summary from like season 3 where the guy was on the thumbnail, and I remembered their names. So I did kind of see like, I was like, well, that's very different. Things do seem to take quite a turn there.
Yeah.
But I won't spoil any of that, especially given I haven't seen it. So
yeah.
So there was that episode. The message was, it was solid. I was like, oh, it was a solid first episode. And like the second episode, it's like, oh, the babysitter from that family from episode 1. Ooh, her story. What's up with her? So she's like, she is at a club and she meets this girl. She ends up really liking this girl, and this girl happens to also be vegan and like be like advocate for like a lot of things. And so the babysitter, she like, it's like she kind of tries, in order to get this girl that she met to like her, she kind of almost tries to like become like her. She tries to like the things that she likes. So she tries to go vegan. She tries to advocate for things. And
She says she's a biker, like rides
oh yeah,
she bicycle when she doesn't.
like, because the girl that she likes is all about like, you know, reducing your carbon footprint and stuff. So she's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna start bicycling. And she ends up like pretending that she biked and just take a cab.
Yeah.
And she gets caught for it. And like at one point she's trying to be vegan, but then she's like babysitting the kids and they're eating a pepperoni pizza. And she's like, gosh, that looks so good. And she ends up eating like the whole pizza. So then when she gets caught for like pretending to bike, then she ends up puking in the toilet, and she's like, I'm puking because I just ate a whole pepperoni pizza. And so the lesson there is like they talk about it, and you know, the girl that she likes is like, I don't need you to be vegan, I don't need you to bike, I don't need you to, you know, advocate a lot, or, you know, I don't need you to do all that stuff, I don't need you to be me, I need you to be yourself, because that's the person that I like. And so that's the message there, is that like you don't have to change yourself in order, like you should not have to change yourself in order to get somebody to care about you and, you know, love you in that way.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Have you ever pretended to like someone, like something, to impress a girl, or like, have you ever,
right?
Like, have you ever felt like you've changed yourself for somebody else?
That's tough. The answer is probably. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I can say I have been in relationships in the past where it felt like I was expected to like kind of change into their version of what they had in mind for me, and it wasn't my version of what I had in for myself.
Yeah.
And for me, that component of the relationship was, for me, what ultimately led to me not being in that relationship anymore.
Yeah.
I think I remember I took psychology of the self in my undergrad, and one of the lessons was specifically on romance. And one of the biggest takeaways that I got from that lesson was that couples are the most happy when your partner is helping you become your ideal version of yourself that you have in mind for yourself, and not the version that they have in mind for you.
Right.
And that really stuck with me, because I'd been in that experience. And then even after learning that and taking that information away, I ended up in that experience, you know, after that. So that's a really interesting thing that I think maybe a lot of people don't think about, is that like, you have to just like this person and accept this person and what they want.
Yeah.
Support that. I mean, you can have their best interest in mind, but you can't force anything on them.
Yeah. I feel like it's tricky too, because I feel like we're not always aware that if we're the ones perpetrating it, we're not always aware we're perpetrating it. And then if we're the ones doing it, we're not always aware that we're doing it, you know? So I think it can be really hard. Like, I feel like I've definitely in the past, like, you know, so the person I'm with mentions that they like a certain thing, and then I'm like, oh, okay, well, like, I'll do that, or like, I'll aspire for that, you know? And it's like, but it's not even like a fully conscious thing. It's just kind of like, you know, it sits in the back of your mind subconsciously, and then you realize like that's happening. And yeah, I don't know. It's it's a weird thing.
Let's get meta with it. This podcast.
Yeah.
You know, the point of this podcast is that we share something with each other that we both like, but we, you know, every time you assign me something, I go into it with an open mind, because it's something that you like. But I think, the healthy aspect of it is that you're not expecting me to like it.
Right.
You're not holding me to liking it.
Of course you wouldn't. We all like our different things.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, I have no problem saying like, oh, I enjoyed watching this and recording it for a podcast. I enjoyed watching this. I don't know if I want to keep watching it.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure. Maybe, I mean, you say season 2 is pretty good, so maybe I'll watch that. But I'm not coming at that from like I have to like this because you told me season 2 is good.
Right.
I think the way that I kind of approach this scenario is just like having an open mind and trying to see what you see in it, and not holding myself to finding that mindset that you're in for myself. But trying, and if it if it doesn't resonate, then it just doesn't resonate, and we're both okay with that.
Yeah. But I think too, like, especially when you're passionate about something and you want that person to also really enjoy it because it's something that you really love. And so I can understand where, like, if someone doesn't, then it's like, but like, like when we play video games, right?
Yeah,
like you'll be like, you'll be like, I really want you to play this. I really want you to like this. And sometimes I'm just not into it.
Yeah.
And I can tell that you're like, but I really like want you to. And that that's understandable. But at the end of the day, you understand, like, okay, that's totally fine that she may not be into this. And like, it just is what it is.
To me, like, it is like fun and hilarious that you disliked Super Mario 64 so much, and I'm like, oh, that's an amazing game. It's probably in my top 10.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, Mario. But the fact that we have this memory of like you trying it, and we talked about it, and you gave your thoughts, and I think all of your reasons for disliking it are incredibly valid, and that that's like just the conversation is, and watching you try it is a cherished memory. Yeah,
I mean, I commend us for we've gone through relationships, we've grown, we've done our fair share of therapy, and so like us being together, we have that healthy communication, and we both understand, like, he's got his things that he really likes, and then I have my things that I really like. And we don't feel that pressure to like conform to the other person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we are in this relationship and we are, in love. Because we like the things about each other that make us us.
Yeah.
As individuals.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then it's also fun to like, I do enjoy playing some of these video games. Like, I do enjoy doing what you like.
Yeah.
So,
I enjoy that we played, Sonic Adventure or whatever, and you're like, oh, I think I'll play that again. And then you never did. But it's like, that's okay.
I'll come back to it one of these days.
I mean, and it's fine if you don't.
I am very bad at coming back to assignments.
But I mean, what I like about this, and we're kind of like off the rails at this point, but what I like about that is that, we got our whole lives ahead of us. I doubt that's going to be the last time I ever want to play Sonic Adventure. So whenever I pick it up again and I decide I want to play the whole thing, you've at least got a memory of having played it before. So you kind of know. Yeah. You'll be slightly more interested then.
Will I?
Than if I was just playing it later in life and we didn't kind of do this.
Yeah.
Already.
Perhaps.
We'll
I mean, see.
Who knows? Whatever.
Yeah.
I enjoy and respect that. I'll mention things like, Hideo Kojima, and you had no idea who that was before. And now, you'll see his name in your life, completely removed from me, and be like, oh, that's that guy.
I call him the Snake Plissken dude because I can never remember the name of the game.
Metal Gear Solid.
There we go. I always want to say Mortal Kombat. I'm like, it's Snake Plissken. That's the dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how much more I want to talk about.
Okay. I mean, I have some more questions.
Okay. I mean, there's some other stories. I'll quickly summarize one. There's a guy who draws, he makes comic books based on his relationships. And his like first book is called Conjugality, and it's about like his relationship with his wife. But then the second one's called Infidelity, and it's about him like, I guess, cheating. And it's all just about his relationships. And the third book is called Obscurity, and that's kind of about how now he's getting a little bit older and he's, you know, fading into obscurity. Like he's not, you know, as popular anymore. And he like has a book event, and these youths, these like young like art students come to his book event, but it's such a small turnout that he's like, let's all just go get drinks and get to know each other. He ends up like bringing some of the young people back to his apartment. He ends up sleeping with one of them. And
just to clarify, they're grad students, so
they're
they're not
grad
like
students.
they're not
Like,
like
okay.
18.
Yeah, that does help. I'm sure. Yes. And so, you know, he ends up sleeping with one of them, and then she kind of like takes some pictures in his house of herself, and then he goes to like an art show for those grad students, and her piece is kind of like pictures of herself with men that she slept with, and there's a picture of like her in his bed, and he is passed out sleeping. And so they get into like an argument, people film it, and then he knows that that's like going to be posted online, but it ends up going viral. And then he has another book event, and he's like, you know, it's not going to be a big turnout, but they tell him like, no, it's full. Like there's a bunch of people there. And she and her friends are there, and he shows up, he's talking to everybody, and he's like, you know, you're probably not here about my book. You're probably here because you saw the video. And the woman in question is right there. And so she gets up, and everybody's just kind of interested. And the two of them have a conversation about like their feelings and, you know, what happened. And I guess they kind of just get into some really interesting territory with the dynamics of all of that, and the themes and the topics of obscurity and being young and yada, yada, yada. And yeah, and then they kind of just like get along after that. And is that the end of the episode?
Yeah, I think the piece that you're missing is like really the central thing about this is like, so when he writes these stories about his life, he's including people who didn't give him permission to like put them in there. And so like the women that he's had these interactions with, they're upset. They're like, I didn't ask to be a part of your work. You didn't ask me permission. And so like, please stop writing about me. Like stop putting me in there because I don't feel comfortable. But he doesn't see an issue with that. And so when this girl takes this picture, and that's her like, you know, grad student showcase, and he's like, this is a picture of me, take it down. And she's like, this is exactly what you do in your own work. Like you have no boundaries, so why should I? Like I'm documenting my life. You were a part of that. So I don't see like how you can have this like negative feeling towards that when that's exactly what you do. And so that's what, when they end up having that conversation at the book signing where everyone shows up, that's kind of the dialogue they get into, and they kind of like argue that out or like debate that out. And then I guess understand each other from that, you know, after they've had that conversation. And that kind of like wraps it all up.
Yeah. And that's like, that's it. That's that whole episode. And I was like, all right. It wasn't my favorite episode, but like interesting watch. And that's kind of overall how I feel about this show.
Yeah.
So I'm not in a rush to watch the rest. But I'm not going to be upset if I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I love about this show is like, it's like that's the purpose it serves. It's like something that's interesting to put on. Like if you, it's a great show if you like, you can't decide what to watch,
and you can just watch one episode.
Exactly, you throw this on, and then it's like, it's just about life. It's about relationships you have, and that doesn't have to be romantic relationships. Any kind of relationship.
It is well acted.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like great actors in it. Like season 2, the first episode's Aubrey Plaza.
Aubrey Plaza's in
Aubrey
it?
Plaza, yeah. Okay. I always think her name's Audrey. But yeah, there's like so many great actors in it, and it's just like, I don't know. It makes you think. It's like, okay, well, what if I was in that situation? Or if you've been in that situation, you reflect on it now because you're like, whoa, now I'm seeing it from an outside perspective. Yeah. And it's like, I've been in that. Like, that's so interesting. So,
I mean, I think I think it was a really good pick because, you know, we were able to like dive into some of these messages and topics and how they apply to us.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. I think that's what I think. It's a great show, especially if you're in a relationship or like to watch with your friend or something, because you can sit there, you could be like, okay, well, what if that was us? How would we feel? How would we like talk about that? Like, would this be something like we're up for? Like, there's a couple that goes on like Hinge or
They
Tinder
go on
together.
Tinder together to try and find a third person to kind of like join.
To have a fun night with.
Yeah.
And it's like, would we do that?
Right,
Who
yeah.
knows, you know?
It's like, and that's like a conversation that without having watched that would never come up.
Yeah, we would have never thought of that.
Right.
So, I don't know. It's just like, it's a fun like conversation starter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just I only have like 2 questions.
Okay.
The first one is like, how do you feel about anthology series? Like, what are some other ones that you've watched? And yeah, what are your thoughts on those?
I think anthology series are generally like pretty interesting because, like we just said, I feel like I'm being interviewed. Because, like we just said, you could just sit and watch one episode.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in this case, it's anthological in that every episode is different.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, maybe in some other shows like White Lotus or American Horror Story, every season is different.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think like Star Wars did an anthology show at one point, and, you know, like it's a popular concept. Like you know, a lot of shows do it. I think it's really fun and interesting, especially when it's in the case of like that Star Wars show. I forgot it was called, like Star Wars Visions, I think.
Oh, that was like it was like different animation styles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What I think was really cool about that anthology series was that every episode was actually just, it took place non-canonically within the Star Wars universe, and each episode was directed by like a completely different animation team. So like there's a lot of really cool things that one can do with the anthology concept.
Yeah.
And like in the case of American Horror Story, it was like every season is different, but some of the actors are the same. So it's like, oh, so-and-so is returning, who their character is going to be completely different this season because it's a different character that they're playing.
Yeah.
So like as a concept, I think it's really cool. I enjoy it quite a bit.
I think some of my favorite shows have that kind of format, and I think I love it so much because you're not limited, like you said. Like you can truly do whatever you want. You're not tied to this plot where like, okay, now we've gone 3 seasons and we're still in it. Like, how do we keep it interesting? How do we like keep it going? How do we make sure it makes sense?
Right.
It's like, yeah, you can really just like any creative thought you have about what could happen in this show, you can do.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Things aren't interesting. Well, just flip it on a dime, go with a different concept.
Yeah, and you can see what people like. I'm sure there's like seasons of American Horror Story where people are like, that one wasn't that great. And it's like, cool, we won't do that again.
It's like I've only seen seasons 1 and 3 of American Horror Story. I actually didn't finish 3, but it was good. And I've seen parts of like seasons 4, seasons 5, and I'm like, not for me. Don't care for those.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
I still really enjoyed this first season.
Yeah. And I'm sure it helps draw in new viewers too, because, you know, some people, like, for example, I never watched American Horror Story because I don't do horror. However, Coven was one that I was like interested in. Did I ever finish it? No.
Well, yeah, and that's the one that I started and didn't finish.
Yeah. But it was like, okay, this is an American Horror Story season I can get behind, and I'll sit out the rest, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I don't know. I just really like it. Like, I think my favorite anthology series is like Black Mirror, you know? And it's like they do so many different wild things. They can change up everything. Like, and halfway through the season, have a episode that's all black and white and there's no dialogue. It's just completely silent. And it's like, that's super cool.
Yeah, and like Atlanta does that sometimes too.
Yeah.
Atlanta's like a special case in that there are characters that we are following, and then sometimes there's just episodes that are not about those characters at all. Or maybe they'll just kind of show up at the end and be like, oh, hey, it's there they are.
Yeah. I know. Atlanta is super interesting. It's very unique. It's a very unique show. But yeah, I don't know. I really enjoy those kinds of series, and I hope that there's more in the future. And I'm sure people who get hired as writers love it because, yeah, they can really showcase their talent.
I imagine they have to write their butts off.
Yeah.
Because there's so many different. I mean, you have to be a very talented writer, I think,
sure.
to handle an anthology, because you are tackling multiple themes and messages, and sometimes completely different characters. So
yeah,
yeah,
for sure. But they get like total creative freedom,
right?
In terms of like all the possible things they could think of.
Totally.
Which is really cool. So my last question is just about depictions of relationships, just in general. So there's actually a show very similar to Easy that was an Amazon Prime original called Modern Love. And it's actually based on a podcast, like a New York Times podcast.
Yeah, and I remember you telling me about it.
Yeah, and so that it's extremely similar in the fact that it's like depicting different relationships. You have these characters. I don't think any of the characters are recurring from my understanding, or from like when I watched it. But I feel like there was this time where like there was a lot of content trying to depict real relationships. Like I think about like A Marriage Story. Was that what's called, A Marriage Story?
Just Marriage
Story.
Yeah.
Like Marriage Story, Malcolm and Marie, which like I don't know if that's really realistic.
I haven't seen it, so I don't.
Very artistic. But I'm like, I guess what I'm wondering is like, do you think, at least from what you saw in Easy, do you feel like those were realistic depictions? Do you think there's like room for improvement, or like, I don't know, like how do you feel about entertainment in terms of like their portrayals of relationships?
Well, I think most of the time, again, I feel like I'm being interviewed. Well, I think most of the time what really happens is, really, most of the time, like a story in and of itself may not necessarily focus on a relationship, but... Well, actually, no. Let's take the romantic comedy genre, and it is focused on a relationship. Mm-hmm. I would say those depictions of relationships, which are the most common, genuinely tend to be the least realistic. And it's because it focuses on getting the couple together, but then it doesn't focus on what comes after that. Mm-hmm. And so this depiction of like real relationships that you're talking about, I feel like that those are properties that are depicting like, oh, well, what happens after that?
Yeah.
Or like sometimes maybe the movie will be more adventurous, and there's like a romantic subplot, but that's all it is. It's a subplot, and they don't dive into the like dynamics of, maybe like they'll get into an argument, but then they'll make up by the end of the movie, and that's the full narrative arc of the romantic relationship. Whereas what you're talking about is like depictions of like the real details of things that actually happen in relationships, and how it's not always going to be the same as it is at the beginning of the relationship, which is like a lot of depictions of love in cinema and on TV and just media in general, is that the buildup of the relationship and the beginning of the relationship, and maybe doesn't always so much focus on, all of the real stuff after. And so I do really appreciate that there, are those types of depictions, especially more so, or at least people are trying to tell those stories a little bit more of like the dynamics that play out in relationships, because it also kind of helps the viewers realize what looks good or what is good, what's the right way to behave and what's the wrong way to behave in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because if all the stories that you're consuming are just, the story of how they got into the relationship, then it will build up like this unrealistic idea of what being in a relationship is actually like. Yeah.
Do you feel like rom-coms are dead? Because I feel like there aren't rom-coms anymore, and I think it's because as a society we're over it. We're like, that's not how relationships are. Like, give us something more real.
Yeah, the only rom-coms that I can really think of off the top of my head that I've watched recently would be like Always Be My Maybe, Crazy Rich Asians, and Dash and Lily.
Yeah. I feel like you get the rom-coms during Christmas time.
Oh, for sure.
Or like during the holidays.
Right. And like in the case of Always Be My Maybe and and Dash and Lily, those are about, they're not in a relationship at the beginning of the movie, and then we get them into a relationship at the end.
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed those movies. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for sure you're not gonna
Mm-hmm.
go like sing its praises about how well written the
Mm-hmm.
dynamics are.
Mm-hmm.
Those movies might be, they err on the cheesier side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still enjoy them.
Yeah. Yeah. But like we really haven't had too many rom-coms.
Well, I mean, I think this also kind of gets at like comedy movies in general. We just don't get a lot of much anymore. And if comedy is, or comedy is kind of just instead being infused into these blockbuster movies. It used to be like you'd go to the movies and maybe you'd be seeing a comedy, maybe you'd be seeing a rom-com, maybe you'd be seeing an action movie, and they would all kind of be separate and contained within their own genres. And now it's more like, the big action blockbuster movies are infusing the comedy, so you're going to get it all when you go and see one of those movies. And people, I mean, nowadays, if a comedy comes out, it's being released on a streaming service because people aren't willing to go to the theater just to see a comedy anymore.
Yeah.
So I think it kind of really speaks to like, what kind of things people are interested in and, in just watching and, what's going to get people to go to a theater. Nowadays, especially post-COVID, it's going to be about a motion picture event, spectacle, Avatar, Avengers, Top Gun. And those are all the movies that like, we went and saw in a theater this year. If, Orlando Bloom's new romantic movie comes out in a theater, skip.
I'd be like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Why would I'll wait for it to come on streaming.
Exactly. And so like nowadays that would just be released on Netflix or Hulu or something.
Yeah.
And some people would watch it, some people wouldn't, and a lot of people will just miss that it even existed in the first place.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So yeah, I guess my point here is that I don't know, maybe we're just so connected, like the post YouTube era of media, and now especially with TikTok, that when it comes to comedy and then romance with like the whole like it's deeper than just like the beginning of the relationship. It's just not quite like resonating with people anymore. Like if we're going to watch something that's specifically funny, it has to be hilarious.
Yeah.
And if it's going to be depicting romance, it needs to be depicted in a way that feels real and relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been interesting. Like I love rom-coms. And as of late, I've been very much like in the mood to watch a rom-com, but I've been so tired of watching the same like 5 that I usually watch. And I'm like, what's new? What's something I haven't seen? And I still have yet to come across something that like piques my interest. I'm like, it either looks super, super cheesy and terrible, like a Hallmark movie, or like, I don't know, it's just, or there's just nothing out there. Like, it's been interesting. So I'm like, where did rom-coms go? Like, what gives me that like nostalgia that's like, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days or whatever. Like what gives me something like that, but like obviously modern day. And it's like, well, maybe they're just not making them because like we're over it as a society.
Yeah, like The White Lotus is really interesting to watch because there are some funny moments, and then there's like some moments where that they are talking about, relationships and romance. Yeah. And then, sometimes there's just like other stuff that's kind of
stressful stuff.
And it's stressful stuff. Yeah. And so it's kind of portrayed with this tone of like, hey, there was a murder or somebody's dead, at the very beginning of the season, and there's kind of this like overarching mystery of like, well, who's going to be the one to die? But then watching all of these relationship dynamics play out over the course of a week-long vacation, and that's the type of thing that people are drawn to a bit more now because it's not
the focal point.
It's not the focal point, but it's not one-dimensional.
Yeah.
It gets you thinking a lot more. It's much like we're all looking for something stimulating.
Yeah.
Because there's so stuff to
out
watch.
there. Yeah.
So, a one note rom-com is not
gonna work.
it's not going to cut it anymore.
Wow. We've come a long way.
Yeah.
In media.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And it's really been the last 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's great because like now we're like really getting into the depths of things of how the world works. But like, dang, sometimes you just want that like
I mean,
terrible
the cheesy bad stuff still comes out, but
yeah.
if you watch the cheesy bad stuff, you tell somebody else about it, nowadays they've never heard of it.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Any other questions or anything?
That's all I have.
All right. That was an interesting discussion.
Yeah, that was fun.
I hope the listeners enjoyed it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Let's do our assignments.
Sounds good. Would you like to go first?
Sure.
All right.
So speaking of cheesy, I'm going to give you a movie I haven't seen in such a long time called Crossroads with Britney Spears, Zoe Saldana, and someone else, I forget who.
Whoa!
The other actor is.
I did not see that coming. My pick is tonally opposite to that.
Which I like because sometimes it's fun to like go into the dark thing and then be like, all right, cheery mode.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that. That sounds interesting. Never heard of it, but you tell me Britney Spears and Zoe Saldana are in it.
Britney Spears' main character.
That excites me.
I think you'll love it.
I'm like, what is this about to be? It sounds like fun.
Yeah.
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 All right. Well, mine, tonally opposite and not so fun. I am assigning you the original Blade Runner.
I knew you were giving me this.
How did you know that?
As soon as you said, I'm going to give you a movie, I think you've seen the second one, you might fall asleep in it, I was like, he's giving me Blade Runner. I just know it. I know it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you seen Blade Runner 2049?
Is that the newest one?
Yeah, with Ryan Gosling.
Okay, I'm going to say I have watched pieces of the first one. I had
a feeling that you had seen pieces of the first one.
I don't know that I've seen the newest one. I think I've only seen pieces of the first one.
With Harrison Ford?
With Harrison Ford.
Oh, all right. But you've never seen the whole thing?
No. I couldn't tell you one thing that happened in it.
So it's still viable as a choice?
Yeah, I think I could recall the beginning of it.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you the end of it. So I think it's still a good choice.
Okay.
And I might fall asleep in it. We have to be very strategic about when we watch it.
I mean, yeah, honestly, like I might fall asleep too. So like I've seen it twice, fell asleep both times, and then had to continue it again later. Because it's a thinker.
Yes. And I find Harrison Ford to be very uninteresting.
Oh no. Well, we will dive a little deeper into that next week.
Yeah.
This is I'm gonna have to do a little bit of research. I think we need to watch the final cut of the movie.
Okay.
There's the theatrical cut, and then I believe there's the director's cut, but then there's like the final cut. So where the ending will be different based on which cut of the movie you watch.
Okay.
It's not so much that the ending is different. Well, it is, but we can talk about it next week.
Yeah.
But that'll be I think it's the final cut that we're supposed to watch.
Oh, I love that I knew it. I was like, he's gonna. And at first, like when we were getting coffee today, I was thinking about it, and I was like, he's gonna give me that Harrison Ford movie. What's it called? I was like, I know I've seen parts of it, and I did find it very boring at first.
Yeah.
But I'm excited honestly, I'm excited to watch it, to see the whole thing, because I definitely have not seen the full thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind.
I mean, yeah, I could speak more on it next week, but it's one of those movies where it's more so that you're appreciating like the craft and the story and the concepts and the philosophy of it more than you are as a unit of a movie, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah.
All right.
See you
So
then.
next week it is
Crossroads
and Blade Runner. That will be fun. Look forward to it. Yep.
Yay.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.